The words KRS-One rapped in 1995 are more true today than ever before. Rappers are in danger. Cities are banning rappers from performing. Police are monitoring their every move. Lyrics are being used against them in court, and at an alarming rate. Rappers are falling victim to tragic gun violence. Why is being a rapper one of the most dangerous jobs in America? Is it something specific to rap, or is it a more broader societal issue? In this conversation, we delve deeper into the issues afflicting rap today from a multitude of perspectives. This is Complex Conversations, War on Rap, with your host, Ari Melber.
What's up? How's everybody doing? My name's Ari Melber. I host The Beat with Ari Melbourne on MSNBC. I'm thrilled to be here at ComplexCon with a lot of people who care about the culture, and this is a panel to discuss some of the war on the culture. And I'll just say up top, America exports a lot of things, foreign policy, capitalism, etc. Hip-hop's one of the only things we export that's actually popular around the world. People love this culture, people learn from this culture, they're inspired by it. And yet here in America, we're seeing a war on the culture in the justice system and the political system, which is basically the criminalization of the art, of the lyrics itself. And I know ComplexCon has a lot of people who care, so you're probably versed in some of this, including the case against Gunna and Young Thug and YSL down in Atlanta. And so we're gonna get into all of that with really two extraordinary artists and have this conversation and also talk about reform, because there's a lot bad and a little bit of good, because there are actually some real change coming up. So what I wanna do is bring out the two great artists that you can hear from, and we're gonna have the conversation. Bun B came up with UGK and Pimp C. He's collabed with artists like Drake, Beyonce, and the other artists you're gonna meet. Let's give a warm welcome here in ComplexCon to Bun B. Welcome. You can take up the center position. The next artist that's gonna join us is a pioneer of something called trap music. I think people are familiar. You could go down to the first generation of this, which laid the foundation for what remains one of the most vibrant parts of hip hop. From Atlanta, 3-time Grammy winner, #1 Billboard songs, including with Rihanna. Please give a warm welcome here at ComplexCon to T.I. Here we are.
What's going on?
What's going on? Welcome.
All right.
How you guys doing? Nice to see you again. How you doing?
Blessed. How you doing? How your mama doing?
My mama?
How your mama them doing?
I think, to my knowledge, good. She texts me every day.
Nice.
You know, family values.
That's a good sign.
First of all, I see the shirt. We're gonna get into a lot, but tell us what the shirt means for those who don't know.
Well, this is a shirt that Lou Cosby, the owner and creator of Purple Brand, created to stand in solidarity with Gunna. Gunna is actually a good friend of his, and they just finished a clothing campaign with him shortly before he was arrested. So this is just to stand in solidarity with my brothers behind the wall right now.
And T.I., I know you just got in. How are you feeling being here in Long Beach, just as we get settled in?
Man, it's splendid.
Splendid. I love that. We did want to take a moment here with our two artists and with this room, given the climate and everything we're discussing, to also have a moment of silence for Takeoff, for PNB Rock, for some of the artists that we've lost, because that's relevant here. So I just want to mark that with a moment of silence briefly here. And thank you, and thanks to everyone for that. When you look at a case like Gunna, for those who know, and some who might not know all the details, that's really what's catalyzed part of this conversation, especially this year, although these problems run a ways back. What's on your mind in that case, Bun?
Well, for me, I'm wondering how broad this will end up being. You know, it's starting in one city and one county, but any success in this case would create precedent and would open up the floor for more cities and more district attorneys to start using different artists' lyrics against them if possible.
Yeah, and I want to give context to that. You could take basically any word from any piece of art. It could be a film, it could be a song, it could be a video game. In the case against Gunna and Young Thug, who are legally presumed innocent, they're facing these RICO charges, they haven't been convicted of anything, they're being held incarcerated in advance of trial, which is different than most wealthier white defendants. And they're also being held and prosecuted for their lyrics. So we're gonna show some of those around here. I think we all know how hip hop is, and there can be tough content, just like there is in The Godfather or Scarface. But when T.I., I'm curious to you as an artist who also comes out of that Atlanta scene, when you look at a lyric we could put up, like, I got all types of cash, I'm a general.
Okay.
If that's criminal evidence, then what isn't criminal evidence?
Okay, so first and foremost, I feel that if you really have solid evidence to win your case, you don't have to resort to fictional lyrics to try and convict people. That's just, first mind. Secondly, I think we'd be remiss if we did not acknowledge the fact that the lyrics come from an environment that the artist endured, overcame, and made it out of. So if you're going to convict them for the lyrics, you have to change the environment first. The lyrics won't change until the environment changes.
Well, that's the thing, right? There's this notion that if we get rid of all gangster rap music, then the crime that they associate with gangster rap music will disappear. I'm here to tell you that's not gonna happen. You can get rid of all trap music, drill music, rap music. Bloods and Crips are going to still gangbang, right? That's the reality of their environment. They were doing this before hip-hop even started. They'll do it when hip-hop is gone. So just attacking the artist and the lyrics doesn't really get to the heart of the problem. As Tip said, we've got to get to the conditions of the environment that these things are happening in and the people that they're happening to, and start there. You create a better environment, maybe you'll get a better product that comes out of that environment that you would deem more socially acceptable.
Absolutely. I think he hit the nail on the head. I believe that it comes from the dire need and the lack of opportunities within the community. Just like he said, the Bloods and Crips, they were, any gang, they were acting out a sense of hopelessness, a lack of opportunities. They saw more camaraderie, more brotherhood, more fellowship on the street corner amongst themselves than they did within the system. And that's where it comes from. So if you want to change the lyrics or the mindsets, then you should give these people more opportunities and more hope.
Bun, can I do a bar?
Please.
I'm not gonna rap it, but I'll quote it.
Of course you will.
Andre 3000 said, she said selling's a sin. And I said, yes, selling's a sin. But so is telling young brothers selling's a sin without giving them new ways to win. You could be in an environment where you have to steal to get food rather than go hungry and die. And throughout world history, most people choose to steal that food rather than to starve. And then the next day, you could figure out whatever else you got to do in the community. America, as I mentioned, seems to be a place that wants to profit off hip-hop, export hip-hop, leech off hip-hop, but then lecture a community about this was the wrong choice with no other choices available.
Look, everybody loves the party side, the TV, the commercialization of hip-hop, right? Honey Nut Cheerios, the B rapping, hamsters in the IKEA, America loves that part. Halloween, you consistently see people who are not of the culture in Adidas warm-ups, with big gold chains and the afro wig. They're very happy when they get to profit off of hip-hop culture. They have no problem commercializing and adopting things that people created. But then when we who create the culture and come from the culture get into positions of power when it comes to commerce, and I don't even think it's necessarily the music, it's when we escape the music. It's when we realize that the music is a stepping stone and we start getting into real businesses and real commerce. They realize not only is that a threat, it's empowerment.
Absolutely. They don't mind dealing with us as long as we just singing and dancing on stages. As long as we can just shut up and do our songs, we're just fine. Now, when we start, supporting certain political candidates that have genuine interest for pushing forward principles in the community, that's when they don't want us to be involved. And I think that I really do believe that they have a problem with black men speaking their minds.
Especially when it comes to organizing, right? The idea that we would use our platform for other than music scares them. That's the reality. You know, it's cool if all I'm doing is rapping about rapping and the type of things that you associate with a hip hop lifestyle. But when I start asking for real change, when I start asking for reform, you know what I'm saying? When I start asking real questions about the conditions of these communities, then I'm just a thug, I'm just a felon, I'm just this and that. Now they have all these different names for me because I won't step and fetch.
Yeah, and I think that the music navigates that, and the question is whether artists get to a point where they have enough lawyers, enough power, enough political connections that they might get out from under that. We see the young artists have the biggest problems with it. To your point, I mean, Jay-Z said, I'm young, black, and famous, so they want to strip me naked. And he's now a billionaire in a level where he would be harder to take on. When you look at these cases that we're talking about, which is part of why we're doing this right now, because this is very real. Gunna and Thug are in jail, legally presumed innocent. I'm a lawyer and a journalist. I cover cases all the time with white people waiting for serious trials. They're walking the streets. I was covering the trial of Steve Bannon. People know Steve Bannon? That's some real thug energy. He worked for Donald Trump. He's been convicted of a felony. He is walking around right now. So he's legally guilty, but because his lawyers put in the right kind of appeal and because of the judge's outlook, he's walking, and these two individuals are waiting, and they're legally innocent. And so that brings us to something we wanted to share that is a short piece of video we made to this point of what's happening in these cases. And then by the end of this conversation, we are going to talk about some of the change. But as I mentioned, I think clarity is necessary, and I think obfuscation and lies is part of the problem. So I just want to be very direct. It is alleged violent content or references by black artists that are being criminalized and used as evidence, and not by white artists. And that's true in music and film. So one more show of hands. I don't want to be like straight substitute teacher with the energy, but how many people followed any of the Johnny Depp trial? Okay. So Johnny Depp was on trial for allegations of violence. How do you prove whether he was violent or not? Do you go to the evidence, the facts about his life? Or do you go to the fact that he played a violent pirate?
He played a violent drug dealer and blow, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get after it. There was multiple examples.
Also, Whitey Bulger. He also played Whitey Bulger.
That might be one of the most violent criminals in America.
Ever.
There you go.
So if you look, we were talking about Whitey Bulger and Johnny Depp playing a violent character on film. In that movie, he actually chokes a woman to death. There's a scene where he takes a woman in a room and chokes her to death. They never presented that in trial against Johnny Depp to show a pattern of behavior. You know what I'm saying? Those kind of things never come into play when people outside of our particular communities and cultures end up in trial, though that's where these things come from. First thing I want to say is if you are, in just the offhanded chance that you are living a criminal life, don't rap about it, right?
Yeah, I think
let's just start there. That should, you would
step one.
Right, you would think you wouldn't have to tell that. It would be like, you know, A-I-O-U and Y understood kind of a thing.
Right.
So let's just say that. And if you are rapping about crimes that happen, even if you didn't do it, you are now an accessory. So let's take that into consideration. And third, you're a person of color, so you're already getting looked at sideways.
We do not have the complexion for the connection.
No, and we will not be.
Not in the legal system.
And there will be no assumptions that occur in our favor. That's the one thing you got to realize. When these people come, they already have it in mind what they're going to do. And not only do they have a plan to single you out, they're going to make an example of the culture. That's what this is. This is deeper than just YSL. Right. This is sending a message to hip-hop culture that we're watching you, we're after you, as if we're all a bunch of criminals. You know what I'm saying? We make music. We're entertainers. I understand why Jamaican culture would go as far as cutting off music of violent connotation. America would never do that because then they can't listen to Elvis Jailhouse Rock.
Right.
You know, they can't listen to songs like Queen, you know, people like that. So they're never going to go that far, but what they will do, as they've always done, is use fear tactics, point the fingers, try to make some example of someone within the culture, paint the entire culture with a very, very broad brush during an election year. Keep that in mind as well. Local elections. right? And this is a local case. This is someone in the county bringing up a case on a state level. Everyone that's involved with this is dealing with an election in their districts, in their communities. And everyone needs a scapegoat when it comes to things like this. Everyone needs someone to point the finger and say, see, this is what's wrong with your community because these rappers are getting money and they're gangbangers and they're gonna move into your community because they're rich off rap money and they're gonna bring the drugs and the violence into your community, which will never happen. Has never happened. There's no precedent for that. But fear tactics, they, in America, have always been used and they've always been used effectively.
Yeah, I think, to your point, a great thing that shocks me about the RICO case for YSL, they say YSL is a gang, correct? However, they've been documented as an LLC, tax-paying, legitimate company. So where do you separate the company and begin the gang? It's the exact same name. So everyone who yells YSL, you now presuming them to be a gang member. And there's no evidence of such.
And no disrespect, but the Hells Angels are LLC too.
Absolutely.
And I don't see them getting dragged into court left and right all the time. So, I mean,
And
America knows how to legitimize who they want to legitimize. Let's just be real.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, no disrespect to the rapping B in the Honey Nut Cheerios.
No.
No disrespect.
All the Kia hamsters. It was entertaining, as most things are when hip-hop gets commercialized. It's entertaining. Look, people like to play in the mud, but they don't want to get dirty. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the
and you
problem.
mentioned, and a lot of this comes to the legal history, and we've had movements that are powered by hip hop. If you think about F the Police, which was actually, if you look at the lyrics, it was a song about police brutality, right? It wasn't F the firefighters. It wasn't F people doing some kind of job that's necessary. It was they think they have the authority to kill a minority.
Well, people love firefighters, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, man.
If a firefighter comes to your house, that means he's coming to help you. If a cop comes to your house, that means there's a problem.
You could get
So
killed.
there's a different connotation in when these different people knock on your door. A fireman comes to get the cat out the tree.
But due to the experiences, okay, Fuck the Police would not have been relevant, would not have been as impactful as it was if it were not relatable to so many people, not just in LA, but throughout the entire country. Young black men and women, well, actually people of color, have been brutally beaten and antagonized by police ever since the police conception. So I think that, you know, you got to deal with the reality, and people want to get rid of the songs, but the songs are merely pointing at the reality.
I think you're making such a deep point, which I hadn't thought a lot about. I think we should reflect on it, because if your song or movie is about, man, whenever I have to hire a second accountant in the Cayman Islands from my private jet, aspirationally, maybe someone's like, oh, that's what I might imagine, but that's not gonna hit right.
Right.
And again, we're talking intergenerationally here, right? Because I believe we all have to do this together. I think young people are adding to hip hop and energizing it in new ways.
Absolutely.
And I think you guys paved the way as pioneers with, obviously you have a lot left to do. I know anytime someone says pioneers, if someone says that to me in the news, I'm like, I'm not gone. But you also are the foundation. You think about the foundation of trap, of Southern sound, and you look at this situation and you say, we really do need to make sure people understand like what we're facing and why those themes are so relatable. Because in the old days, if you want to say, when I was growing up, if you wanted someone's number, you asked them for it and you had to write it down with a pen. You know what I'm saying? Like with a pen, not a phone. And if you heard a story about police brutality, it usually wasn't on the media, most of the corporate media, most of the white-led media, which is just a fact. And there wasn't a video to back it up. So what you're saying, T.I., is that hit with people all over the country who were sharing that experience.
Absolutely.
While the press of the time and the politics of the time were saying, no, that's not happening. It's only in the last few years where we've seen, and I can show you the data, slight shifts in the prosecution of officers only when there's a video. And a lot of times when there's a video, they still get off, but now video has changed that. And so I'm wondering what you think about that intergenerationally, because you're reminding us that song came out and people knew it to be true because they lived it.
Right. I think that, you know, none of these lyrics would resonate if it were not for the ability to relate by so many. People ask me all the time about trap music. Is it not glorifying a certain lifestyle? Is it not glorifying criminal life? No, not exactly. It's merely providing a testimony for people who made it through a certain area of life that was meant to break them. And they, I guess you could call it philosophical presentation, set to music, you know what I'm saying? And I think that has changed the standard of living for generations, for so many, and created a way where there was no way. And I believe that it is that monkey wrench in the plan that is the problem.
Well, it's funny, I think Hit Boy's coming up later. On the new Nas album, Nas says, this ain't a song, it's an audiobook.
No, and it really is, because as Pip said, it wouldn't resonate if it wasn't true. These people wouldn't be able to become as popular as they are in these communities where these things are happening if what they talked about weren't a real reflection. I find it crazy that, hip hop isn't even the most critical form of music. No one criticizes the government, the police force, and the powers that be more than like punk rock music, right? But because the practitioners of punk rock are white, they don't see a threat. They see themselves.
Right.
So it's just these kids are blowing off steam, while they're literally beating each other's ass on the dance floor, right? But that's real violence, right? Not to criticize punk rock music. I love punk rock music. But you're not going to see the dead Kennedys on trial. You're not going to see Johnny Rotten on trial for saying God Save the Queen, which is really saying fuck the Queen. You know what I'm saying? If we said fuck the president, you know what I'm saying? The FBI would be at our door the next day. Literally, you know what I'm saying? Ask Eminem. And he's white. You know what I'm saying? So when you get to the point of criticizing the powers that be, criticizing the establishment, right, for the conditions that you live in, talking about the conditions is one thing. Pointing the finger at someone for culpability in those communities and what's happening with those conditions, that's when people get upset. That's why Tupac as a gangster rapper was not a threat. Tupac as a conscious black man trying to change his tone was a threat. They do not want to see growth in us. They want to catch us at our worst, in their eyes at our worst, and take us out before we have a position of power to really influence change in this world.
I thought, as you were speaking, it brought to mind, I've never seen America try to stop somebody from lying. I've never seen somebody try to, mute someone who's just spewing out a bunch of falsities. Never seen it.
Well, we couldn't have politicians if they did.
Absolutely. The only time America wants to silence you is when you're telling the truth. You can go back to 2 Live Crew, Banned in the USA, Ice-T, Cop Killer. You can, of course, NWA with Fuck the Police. Every time people of color, people who come from these disenfranchised, marginalized areas of society that the rich and well-to-do would love to just forget it exists. It is the reminder that you guys taking resources that should be shared with us, and this is the penalty for it. This is the outcome. Crime is inevitable, but it's because the people who are in positions to offer resources, to offer programming for these areas of society, they don't do it. So now when you hear someone say fuck the police, it's like, oh, whoa, wait a minute, let's get a little too real, too fast. And we can't allow other people to say fuck the police, because then our police officers will have a hard time patrolling the area.
So this goes to what is also a paradox that comes up in these debates, where we're talking about how this reflects a truth, but we're also talking about how it's art, so it's not evidence. And I think about it like there's a difference between something being accurate and something being true. A love song could feel really true because it connects with your experience, but it wouldn't be accurate. So it would say, she broke my heart, I was only 25. I messed with that song, but in my case, I was 20. So it's not accurate, it's not about you, but you feel it. And I think that's something that's very important, especially when we talk about all the issues in the art, because we're talking about the truth of this. But then the art is still allegorical, right? It's still fantasy, it's still artistic. So just to pick one of the lines that, as a lawyer, I think it's wild that they're using this in the case when you have the YSL line, ready for war, like I'm Russia. Now, just to be real, I'm gonna be a real newscaster about it and then let you guys weigh in. I don't think that Thug is saying he actually has access to nuclear weapons or the Russian military or satellites. I mean, Russia has satellites. I mean, I know people flex, like, I got the jet. I mean, you ain't got a satellite or a constellation of them. I don't think this is literal. I think it's an allegorical bravado. This is in the case, right? I don't have to say the case is dumb. I could just show you how dumb this is, right? So how do we understand, if we want to be deep about this culture we care about, like as fans, you guys are artists, creators, how do we understand that, what I'm calling that paradox between the truth of it, because it is about real stuff in the world, but it's not literal accuracy, which is why it's usually not fair to be criminalized?
Well, I think we're dealing with two different courts, right? We're dealing with the criminal court on one hand, and we're dealing with the court of public opinion on the other hand. Court of public opinion leaves room for interpretation, leaves room for nuance, right? Leaves room for people to draw a reasonable conclusion. This doesn't leave any room for anything.
Right.
This is meant to vilify, criminalize, and label these people in a certain way. There's no other way. There's no reason to include something as ludicrous as this to assume that these people would have that level of access to this kind of firepower or military resources. That's ridiculous, right? But what you're trying to do is paint these people with the same brush that America paints with all of their enemies, right? They're trying to show these people as being akin to someone as despised as Vladimir Putin, right? Vladimir Putin is, for the most part, nobody's favorite person. You know, maybe in Mar-a-Lago, but not many
Except
other
Donald
places,
Trump,
right?
Donald,
you know what I'm saying? But I'm saying that to say that they're trying to paint young black entrepreneurs, you know what I'm saying, from the inner cities of Atlanta with the same brush as a tyrannical, you know, I don't want to curse in this thing. He's just an evil motherfucker.
I think you
right?
could curse if you want,
You know what
yeah.
I'm saying? He's just an evil motherfucker, and you can't do that. You can't quantify those two things. There is no parallel.
True.
Right? There is no parallel in the real world. But in a courtroom, you'd be surprised how easy it is to connect these very broad dots. You're a lawyer. People get paid big money to connect those dots in court.
You know, even a step further than that, there is no other art form that exists where people who are not familiar with this art form and are not able to execute this art form expect to completely understand it and know everything that's going on in it.
To a position
except
where
for
they
here.
can critique it.
Exactly. Let's just say a violinist came up here, and the violinist played, and I don't play the violin worth a damn. But if I was to say, hey, you're holding that wrong, it must mean something that you're holding it that way instead of, they're gonna look at me like, man, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? You don't even know how to, you know what I mean? So why is it that people get to come in and critique our art and not understand the shit that they don't understand?
Because they don't look at it as art. That's the problem.
So it's good enough to sell your products. It's good enough to, to connect it to some
a
of
jingle in a commercial will sell a product, but they don't look at it as art. But it takes a fine art and skill set to create a song for a cereal or a pair of jeans or an auto parts store that you get, 1877 cars for kids. That it seems throwaway, but they probably went through 10 different versions of cars for kids before they got to that.
And that's why the words and the categories matter. I mean, I use the word art very deliberately today, and you do as well. And we talk about privilege. It's more of like a hostile ignorance to come up and say, oh, Your Honor, we found this lyric, and we're going to tell you what it means, even though we don't actually listen to this music, we're not a part of this culture, and we don't even start. If you're a good judge, which not all are, but if you're a good judge, you are supposed to start with a, quote, disinterested mindset, which is to say you're not pro or con. If you come in con and say, I don't know anything about this, I don't have the background, I don't personally listen to it, it's not my community, and here's my hostile ignorance of it, that'd be no different than going to one of those French art museums and looking at, I don't know if y'all have ever seen when they have like the paintings that are mostly like one color, and you're like,
what is it?
Like Rothko, you're like, what is it?
What's the point?
And so why has this been hanging here for 100 years? But there might be a reason if we learned about the artist, the culture, the painting, why it's different than some other painting. And sometimes people say, I can't tell it apart, and they think they're criticizing the art, but they're actually outing themselves.
Right.
Because someone could walk out in the back and be like, it just looks like another sneaker. It's like, okay, so you don't know much about sneakers, is what you're telling me.
Well, hip-hop is always looked at as cool. Like the culture is cool, it's fun, it's hip, it's edgy, it's all that, but it's never described as art. It's never put in that box. It's never labeled as such, which allows them to denigrate the culture, right? It allows it to label it outside of everything they deem classy or worthy or of value.
Certainly.
You know, it's very easy to devalue hip hop culture by, you know, using lyrics like they put up on there to literally box everyone in under that one thing. When YSL is on trial, hip hop is on trial. Make no mistake about it. And there is no differentiation between a Talib Kweli, you know, or a Takeoff. It's all the same. It's always the same. People consistently say, why doesn't hip hop rap about this? Or why don't they talk about that? It's talked about that for years. Hip hop was started on positive community.
KRS-One.
You know, all of this kind of stuff. Even the message was about how bad it was in the project. You know what I'm saying?
Certainly.
Broken glass everywhere. No one cared to listen to what they were talking about. They looked at the clothes, the dancing, and all of that stuff, right? That's what they drew from it. They've never drawn the deeper context of the conversations that hip-hop has been having in the music, in the art form, in the culture, and in society. They've never given us our true social grace.
Yeah.
You're nodding, and I'm wondering how you feel about that, because you are a Grammy-winning artist with the #1 Billboard tracks, with Rihanna and other people. I know that, and you're multi-genre. I know that's not your only thing, but did you ever feel like you were crossing over and
Take
getting...
your accolades, brother.
I mean,
Take your
I'm
accolades.
humbled by it, but when you have, I was also the one who got drugged to prison, you know, in spite of all of it. And, you know, I ignorantly chose to go back, but that neither here nor there. When you say that it's never been considered an art, that struck me, because you have two of the most artful individuals in our community being held like, you know, like they wouldn't do Michelangelo or Leonardo like this.
They wouldn't do Quentin Tarantino like this.
Or Oliver Stone.
You know?
And another thing that's striking to me, I don't know how they plan on using all the thugs' words against him, because I can't figure out half the shit he's saying my damn self. How do they know so articulately, with such certainty, what he's saying, when I've seen him record? A lot of times he don't know what he's saying.
It's
they do
a
a
feeling.
They
You
have
dig what
rap,
I'm saying?
They have
Yeah.
access to Rap Genius, though.
Oh, is that so? They have experts, I'm sure.
Right. That's their job. To
In
sit
their
in front
white
of a
lab
laptop all
coats,
day
experts
and
in
go
their
on
white lab
genius.com
coats and their pocket protectors come in and
sift
tell
through
us.
lyrics to try to find some roundabout connection, you know, the same way they tried to find the JFK bullet, so to speak.
Well, and Bun, you're also referring to the fact that sometimes the after-the-fact justification is other, shall we say, editorial judgments about the genre. You say, oh, how does this treat this or that group? Which you could say about all of Hollywood. There's films that are great.
Certainly.
And they don't age well, or you look at the stereotypes they might perpetuate. I mean, Thug is an interesting example because they're using what are fairly vague references to bravado and violence, but this is also a super sensitive, fashionable individual. This is a rapper who shows up in a dress as part of his art. I wouldn't say you could reduce him down to the version of him that's being presented in court.
No, you can't. But that's the thing. They don't see the person when they look at us.
Right.
That's the problem. We are not humanized in the same way that other people from other cultures are. You know what I'm saying? It's particularly when it comes to hip hop, right? Look at his hair. I'm literally, look at his hair. You know what I'm saying? That's not conducive to a lifestyle that they have a frame of reference to. So it has to be a part of something that they don't understand, right?
And that has to be evil.
Right, but rather than trying to understand it, it's a lot easier for them to draw assumptions, right? And it's very easy in such a politically divisive environment they have right now to politicize these things, right? So it's very easy to throw a RICO case on a group of rappers that look like criminals,
Right.
who make music that seems like it would be the soundtrack to criminality, right? But it's nothing more than the experiences of people from an environment.
This
and
is
this
true.
is the reality of that. And look, Eric Clapton made a song called Cocaine, right? I'm pretty sure he did cocaine.
I'm pretty
when he
sure,
did
yeah.
that song, right?
Yeah, sneaking
But the feds
suspicion.
didn't run in his house to see if there was cocaine, right? And that's the problem. Because if we talk about guns or we talk about drugs, they're gonna run in our house to see if we actually have that stuff.
Pretty much.
You know what I'm saying? That we will be given no artistic license in our music, in our thoughts, in our conversation.
And just to touch on guns, because again, there's the gun violence problem. We mentioned that at the top, and I think a lot of people care about that. But if we're going to be consistent or fair, if America's ever going to live up to what it claims to be, there is a long-running political movement about the right to own guns. And it's allegedly everyone's right, and it's in the Second Amendment, and the Supreme Court strengthened it. But then when you look at the enforcement of these laws and what you're referencing, it turns out for a lot of people it is the right of white people to own guns.
Pretty much.
And so you have artists, again, let's put actual proven violence to the side. You show me someone doing a murder on tape, I'll show you the murder conviction. But you have artists getting in trouble for a gun in their group, a gun in the car, in a country where you have an entire political party on the right as a movement designed around saying you should own as many guns as you want, including AR-15s, and 25 of them. So I guess
who are they sending that message to, though?
Yeah.
Well,
right?
If we were to just stick to the Constitution, okay, the Second Amendment says these rights are unalienable. That means it cannot be moved, taken away for no reason. If the Constitution says that, how can you lose your Second Amendment right if you are convicted of a felony? It says inalienable. Then I don't understand how people are being punished so severely when the Constitution, which is the guideline for the entire country.
Yeah. So look, that's a lot of the double standards. If you're sitting here with us or watching, wherever people are watching this later, you might say, all right, it's a lot of fucked up shit. So where do we go from here, and is there anything positive? And in the news, like, my job's not to make it more positive than it is. Sometimes we go with just weeks and weeks of bad news. There is good news here, as I mentioned. I want to make sure we get to that before we wrap up, which is there is change in certain places in the country on the issue of whether you can criminalize this black-led art, these lyrics. And so I want to start by sharing something that's already happened just this year. California, actually, some of you may have heard about this, passed a law, the governor signed it into law this year to end the practice that's being used in Georgia and other places. So we happen to be here. I mean, we could hold this any number of places, but we're actually in a large state with a lot of people where this practice ended. If you were in a trial last year, they could still do this year in this state. They can't. And Governor Newsom did that in concert with a lot of artists, including Meek Mill, Kevin Liles, who's led the Protect Black Art Project. And so I just want to make sure we're clear on that update because it's new and interesting and it shows some change. Federally, we can put up on the wall, and I know, look, I'm not saying that like HR 8531 is as exciting as a Sneaker or a T.I. song or a Bun B track, but we did want to do our homework with y'all here for those who want to learn more. This would do it federally. It's not my job to tell you in the news what should or shouldn't be law. Everyone can make up their own mind, but I do want to inform a little bit and then toss it back to you guys. Progress in California, not in Georgia, and a proposal now in Congress with some members of Congress saying actually this should actually be a protection. So they're taking it, if this passed, if this became law, they would take it out of the hands of prosecutors and judges and just say, no, you can't do this because you've been doing it in basically an unfair or racist way. Right. And so, Bun, I want to get your reflections on that because it's some progress.
Well, here's the reality, right? California realizes that they have a real gun violence issue and it has nothing to do with people making music. That's the reality of California, and it's the reality of the America that we live in right now. Unfortunately, again, it's an election cycle, and so people need scapegoats to instill fear. And so hip-hop is consistently used to say, see this is what threatens your safety, this is what threatens your security. California realizes that rap music is not the problem. Right? Guns, the proliferation of guns being available in this country is the problem. Take away all the rap music, the guns are still out there in the hands of people who will do bad things with guns. Since the beginning of mankind, the idea, the concept of the thief is as old as mankind itself. Someone is always going to take the option of taking as opposed to working. It's got nothing to do with the music they listen to. It's got nothing to do with the neighborhoods they live in. Rich kids steal, poor kids steal. That's just a fact of life. We are consistently used culturally as a scapegoat. And hip hop is sick of it. We're tired of it. And the reality is that we live in an America where there are politicians in office who have grown up on hip hop culture and have a much more nuanced understanding of the situations that people speak about, the conditions that they draw attention to, and the communities in which they come out of. And because of that, they can understand exactly who's saying what and why, right? Not who's doing what. They're not looking at us as an imminent threat.
And that goes generationally, and this is wild, and I noticed T.I., I don't know if you are allergic to flowers, but you weren't into it when I mentioned some of your deserved flowers earlier.
Oh, man, nah. Hey,
See what I did there? It's dad jokes at ComplexCon.
It's
Humility is great.
It's a pollen analogy.
I gotta keep the ego in check. You know what I'm
But this
saying?
is actually wild for both of you if you want to reflect on it with us, which is you're at a place in your careers where your fans aren't only running companies, your fans, by fans I mean grew up on you.
Right.
Are in Congress. Hakeem Jeffries, this week Nancy Pelosi stepped down. She had been Speaker. Republicans won the House. She stepped down from the leadership spot. The person in line to take her place is one of the leaders of the Democrats in the Congressional Black Caucus, Hakeem Jeffries. He's the only person to ever quote Biggie Smalls in an impeachment trial, which he did it with Trump and said, if you don't know now, you know why you're here because you messed up. But to Bun's point, and it's a broader thing. And then before we go, I did want to get your reflections on some of the violence that unfortunately we're facing as a country writ large and in hip hop and other communities. But to T.I., what does that mean to you? What Bun says, because you have fans that are in positions of power, and that may be the generational change. That may help.
I think there can be no bad without good, no good without bad. You know, we have positive with every negative and negative with every positive. So anytime we take enough of our attention and energy and direct it towards something negative, there's always going to be something positive attached to it, whether we choose to consider it or not is the case. And I mean, it's hopeful. It's hopeful. I think that, you know, the greatest journey begins with one step. So we have legislation passed in California. We have something being proposed federally. That's always a great start. What I would like to do, though, I would just like to speak a bit because we're talking about, you know, Thug and Gunna as, I guess, fixtures, if you will. But I knew these kids when they had nothing. These kids was really just, you know, hanging around me, figuring out how to record, how to put their thoughts on track to get their families out the ghetto. Gunna as well as Thug. And as far as Young Thug is concerned, I've never seen someone so selfless, someone who not only reaches back for the people he knows, he don't even have to know you. He don't even have to know you. I know you guys have heard the legend of Thug paid Lil Baby to get out the game. I will pay you. Just don't go, you know, do what you were doing. Come do this because you have a future in it. I don't know many people in many different areas of life who are willing to invest that much into someone other than themselves or their family. That speaks to the heart of a person. All of these other things, these allegations and, you know, whatever they are, I feel like I know the heart of a person. And the heart of a person is gonna pretty much let you know what I'm saying, what is or is not probable to me. That's what I owe someone who I know has a good heart. I've known Bun for 20 plus years. You know, and I know he has a good heart. So if someone says something heinous about Bun, I'm gonna go back to the heart that I know of Bun B. I'm gonna say, nah, that's not the person I know. And I think that that's what we have to do more of. Because I think when people see Thug and Gunna, they see, you know, some pretty outlandish characters, dressed fly and flashy, but they don't see the human in them. They don't see the human in them. I saw Gunna come from the projects, just catching rides to the studio, figuring out how to, he didn't even want to tell nobody that he could rap. He just wanted to sit around and listen. And now he worked his way all the way up to the Met Gala, if you will, before he was arrested and being held without bond on charges that are associated with his lyrics, the very thing that he used to get himself out of the projects. I think that narrative has to change. That narrative, because it seems like we're being penalized for progression. And I think that's what has to change.
Well, and you put that poetically, the words, the art, the lyrics that change his own life.
Right.
Is what's being used against him in contrast to everyone else who uses words to create the beautiful things that inspire us. My job is to keep it going towards, as we wrap up, we did want to just set aside a little time, given the whole conversation, to discuss crime. I say crime, I don't say, quote, violence in hip hop, because there's crime writ large. Since the pandemic, there have been what we call macro disruptions. So it's not, oh, this store closed or what's going on with these two people fighting. There have been huge economic disruptions that we all lived through, and that has increased the murder rate and violent crime and some property crime. It's not anything like it's been at the highest points in American history. So as Bun mentioned, if you ever have a TV on, the issue that had the most ads running from one of the political parties last cycle was the crime issue, and people started to feel there was a ton of crime. I could tell you statistically it's up, but not up like the 80s. And I say that writ large because then hip-hop or Atlanta or wherever is part of America, where unfortunately right now the murder rate is up. So I want to be very precise in how I introduce the topic, but on the topic, before we wrap up, your thoughts about some of the violence that we're facing. And then within hip-hop, we have lost people, successful people, people who are obviously able to have planning and security, but still taken so young. We mentioned Takeoff and others. So I just wanted to leave the floor for that before we wrap up to you, both of you.
I will say, that there is a lot of senseless and tragic acts that are happening in our community. And it's not just the hip-hop artists, but just you see people with so much promise cut down in life at such a young age, and that really is what tears people apart. But I want to make sure I say this right. When we talk about crime in this country, it's almost always of origin in our communities, right? That's where it always, when we talk about crime in this country, you don't talk about crime in Appalachia, you don't talk about crime in, Martha's Vineyard, you talk about crime in black communities. Sure. Crime happens everywhere, murders happen everywhere. But for some reason, it's the crime that emerges from our community, which is the threat to this world, and nothing could be further than the truth. The reality is, as a rapper, you hear people saying, rap is the most dangerous job in America. It's not the most dangerous job in America, but it's a very dangerous position to put yourself in. Summertime get too hot, people get robbed and shot.
Christmas too. That's
the reality. Shit. When wintertime get too cold, shit will get sold. So this is the reality of the country that we live in.
Have you thought about rhyming?
You might have a future. You might have a future in it, man.
I sent something to Tip a while ago. He didn't respond. But no, the reality is that this is all economically based, right? You can look at crime statistics in any year in this country, and when the average person in America was not doing good, crime rose. When Americans have money, crime goes down. That's why everybody was so happy when they got stimulus checks, because they felt like not only did I get some money, but so did the motherfucker that's planning on robbing me this weekend. Hopefully he got a check.
Well, and I'll footnote and let you finish, because as lawyers, we deal with criminology. The crime rates were lowest in major American cities right after the dot-com boom. And that shit didn't even trickle down very much. And there's not a lot of tech in Detroit. So you can have a discussion about whether the equity is there. I would say, I could show you the numbers that the finances didn't get shared.
Right.
And the labor doesn't get rewarded. That's a larger conversation. But in criminology, just a dot-com boom that was concentrated at the time in this state, Silicon Valley, and then some spillover to New York where all the lawyers and bankers then are involved, that was enough money through America that crime was dropping in Detroit and Atlanta. So if you study the statistics, you go, was hip-hop more or less whatever that year? Wrong question.
No.
Wrong question.
Look at the money.
Yeah.
Follow
So
the
I
money.
did want to add that to what you're saying. Let you finish, and then T.I. can weigh in.
Yeah, and we see right now, like America during COVID went through one of its worst, recessions, and we're still technically in a recession. People are still hurting, primarily the average hardworking blue-collar people of America.
And when you say the recession, you don't mean the Jeezy album.
No.
You mean an actual recession.
Yes, because our president isn't black. So,
Anymore.
So, and that's the problem. And so, if you look at these communities, right, where the majority of the violence is coming from, those are the communities that are the most affected by the lack of resources, the lack of commerce, opportunity, employment, what have you. The people with the least are going to do the most just to break even.
Absolutely.
That's the reality of many places in America.
I think truer words have never been spoken. I think that the conditions of the underserved areas, they represent the crime rate, period. And there's a notion that crime comes from lyrics. No, the lyrics come from crime. And in order to change it, you got to go to the source. You got to attack the source. Provide more opportunities. So how I see it, let's just say in the community where Bun is from or where I'm from, let's say there are 10,000 people in that community with only enough resources and opportunities for 2,000. So those other 8,000, they got to get in and infringe upon some of the opportunities and the resources from those 2,000. Whereas across town, there are communities where there are 10,000 people and 20 or 25,000 worth of opportunities and resources. So instead of us attacking the 2,000, why not go and get some of this opportunity that is available? And as American citizens, you are eligible or you are a part of the dream. So I think that's what the crime comes from. That's what the lyrics come from. And until we attack that, we just gonna be chasing our tail.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I hope for everyone in the room and everyone listening out on streaming, that sinks in, because that's really important. Here's what I want to do in closing. If you have 3 people on the panel and one of them is the person that the fewest people came to see, and that would be me, I don't want to go last. So I'm going to say my closing remarks and then let you guys close it out. That's a show business entertainment concept. So I just want to, again, say thank you to ComplexCon for, in addition to everything else they're doing for the culture and creating this community, really programming this, because this is important. These are real cases. Like I mentioned, I've talked to and reported on this and talked to Thug and Gunna's counsel, to people on this issue. We've had Kevin Lyles from 300 Entertainment, and who's leading the Protect Black Art project I mentioned on my show. And so I think it's really important that we do all this. So I'm here to be a part of that, to listen afterward. I'll be over there if anyone wants to say hi. And again, if you guys want to connect with me, Ari Melber, MSNBC, you can find me on socials. So that is what I want to say about closing up. If you want to learn more about this issue, you can go to Protect Black Art. You can look at the bills we mentioned. Again, not telling you what to do, but you can learn about it, make up your own mind. In closing, I think we'll go to T.I. and then Bun B. Anything y'all want to close out with as well? I will prompt you with optional questions or do your own thing, but you could also go ahead.
I'm gonna keep it very short and sweet because I gotta pee. I've been, I've been sitting up and sitting back for too long. Anyway, and when you get up in age, you got to go when you got to go. Now, what I would say is I want to thank ComplexCon for allowing us a platform and for inviting me and Bun to be a part of this important panel and doing it on behalf of 2 of some of the most creative, artistic, and the most thoughtful people that I've ever met, that came from nothing, made it to something, and didn't just take it for themselves, brought others with them. And if everybody does a little, nobody has to do a lot. So let's not wait for one person to have all the answers. Each and every last one of us have a position to play in the solution. So I'm sure everybody out here has great minds, great thinking capabilities. let's just start to be thoughtful and think about what we can do individually to stop the mindset, the culture of the heinous violence and because I really don't think that guns kill people. The lack of emotional intelligence by people who are allowed to have guns is what kills people. So I think once again, I'm a solution-based person. I try to attack the source of the problem, the issue. If we stop thinking about whatever the news puts on there for us to think about, what they think we should be discussing, and start really looking at the core of the issue and find the true solution. And I think the sooner we start, the sooner we'll get there.
I gotta follow that. Okay. In all seriousness, I just want to leave you guys with 3 words. Don't give up. Don't give up on your fellow man. Don't give up on this culture. And don't give up on this world. Many of our lives revolve around media, whether we like to admit it or not. It's pretty much where we get all our information from. And unfortunately, the most titillating media tends to come with ugliness, just to be honest. Most of what we're bombarded with is very ugly. And the constant seeing of ugliness would have us believe that we live in an ugly world, and nothing could be further from the truth. God created a beautiful world for us to all live in and commune in with each other. The problem isn't us, the problem is them. It's very important for you to realize the problem is not us. We're fine as people, as a society, as human beings, we're fine. It's the messaging that's the problem. The constant bombardment of the idea that half of the people in this country hate you and you should hate them. That's bullshit. I don't see it. I see people who don't agree. I see people who differ in opinion. And I know there are extremists on both sides. I don't see it unless it's on social media. The idea that this world is ugly is being sold to you by ugly people who want to keep you down. They want to keep you depressed. They want to keep you unengaged. They do not want you to be energized and excited about getting up and getting out in this world. I'm in Los Angeles. You get up in the morning in Los Angeles, the sky is always fucking blue. The palm trees are beautiful. Yeah. I ride around in LA and nothing could be more beautiful than Los Angeles, the place where I'm at. Excuse me. You cut on the right song, ride up to PCH. That's almost a perfect day. But what happens in the midst of that? You're not online. In order to get in the car and drive and enjoy the world, in order to look up at the sky, you can't look down at a phone.
Right.
And the more you look in that phone, the more you're informed by other people's worldview. We are okay. The human race is okay as long as we're left to us to deal with it with each other. We have got to stop amplifying the loudest of voices, which are always the ugliest. We have got to stop giving attention to bullshit people and movements. Sure. There are a lot of people online, and I tell people all the time, people call me every morning with opinions of people they don't like. Why? Why do you even I have no opinion about people I don't fuck with. And I mean that. Anybody that knows me knows I could give a fuck what people are doing that I have no general care and concern about. But that's a minute amount of people. Of all the people I know, there's only 2 or 3 people that get on my nerves, and that's character flaws, right? But I'm saying all of that to say, don't give up. You look online and you see some crazy shit, don't give up. You cut on TV and you hear some crazy shit, don't give up. You turn on a radio, you hear some crazy shit, don't give up. We can win this. There's more of us than there are of them. We just have to stand together and speak louder. All right, that's it. Go shop and go eat and have a great day.
Give it up for Bun B and T.I. Thank you, everybody.
Love.